Today we've got another lottery-bound team, another team that is going to be in the lottery, hoping to reverse their fortunes by lucking out and winning the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. But even if they don't, this is a team that I would be willing to bet isn't back in the lottery next year, or at least has the pieces in place to not be back in the lottery again if things go according to plan. Is the plan that they are trying to make happen one that I would implement? Maybe not, but they have the pieces there to be more competitive. And of course, we're talking about the Toronto Raptors, who were just another team that was just decimated by injuries, which we'll get into. Didn't have the expectations of some of the other teams that were, such as the 76ers, who we have already discussed. I think there was a lot of people that expected Toronto to be a lottery team, even if they were healthy. I was a little bit more optimistic about them, and they finished 7 games out of the play-in tournament, despite missing a lot of players for a lot of games, and then also making moves at the trade deadline to try and help their lottery odds. I think heading into next season, we should be a little bit more optimistic about Toronto, even if they don't get Cooper Flag. They have the pieces in place to be more competitive. But what will that lead to? Probably more mediocrity. Before we get into talking specifically about the Raptors, their direction, and how we should talk about and value these players in dynasty fantasy basketball leagues, just wanted to remind you that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing. We've got the NBA and NHL playoffs. Tonight, we're going to be having two teams fighting to stay alive at home. We got both the Rockets and Lakers trailing 3-1 in their respective series. And they're both favored. So currently, to win that game, let me just be very clear about that. To survive for at least one more game, Houston is favored by 4.5. The Lakers are favored by 6. It's going to be difficult to bet against LeBron and Luka with their backs against the wall. I'm not saying I would pick them to win this series necessarily, but for this game 5, even if Minnesota has been the better team so far, I think, backs against the wall, just trying to stay alive. We're going to see either a very special performance from LeBron, a very special performance for Luka, or potentially both. And then as far as the Rockets and Warriors, I think that's going to continue to be a very, very, very physical series. And Houston potentially having their season ended, I think is just going to raise the stakes, and we may see more physicality. Hot take there, I know, that in a series that is going to feature or has been featuring Dylan Brooks against Draymond Green. I mean, if you're looking at it and you're saying, oh, Jimmy Butler and Amen Thompson aren't even the most physical players or in this series, it's already been one of those series. And I'm assuming that with the stakes even higher, it's just going to be even more physical. That's going to be one you aren't going to want to miss. And if you want to get on the action and think that one team's going to go one way with the game and is going to win it, you can do that with BetOnline. Isn't that great? Really convenient. You can do it from the privacy of your own home. Isn't that awesome? With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB to the NHL to UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, let's talk about the Toronto Raptors. First of all, let's just talk about where they are as a team. So they're coming off a 30-52 season. Again, they missed a lot of time from a lot of different players. I think that they're better than a 30-win team on paper. Now, of course, that has to all be implemented and it has to all work flawlessly. Maybe not even flawlessly. It just has to work together. And they have enough talent, I think, for this to be a postseason team. They'll also be adding the 39th pick as well as the 7th best odds at Cooper Flag, or at least someone kind of in that early half of the lottery range, which is just going to add more talent to a talented team. I think that they do have talent. They have some young depth. They have a couple of rotation veterans that are solid. They have multiple 20-point per game scorers. I think you could make an argument that there are 4 players on this team that could average 20 points per game. Will they all in the same season? Maybe not, probably not, but 4 players that have that upside. As far as who's going to be on this team next year, the only 2 players that are unrestricted free agents that were on the team last year are Chris Boucher, who, based on the way his time with the team ended, when he just didn't see the floor for like the final 2 months, despite being a solid piece. I imagine that he's not going to be back, but that remains to be seen. I'm assuming he's going to be elsewhere. And then Garrett Temple, if he gets picked up by another team, maybe he re-signs on another team-friendly deal. Tuck that one away for an episode of Who He Play For, I guess. But most of the rest of this team is going to be sticking around. There's a couple of younger guys that are on 2-way deals or on non-guaranteed contracts, but Brandon Ingram, Manuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes, that's probably the starting lineup. They're all under contract. Some young guys like Grady Dick, Ochai Agbaji, Jacoby Walter, Jonathan Mobo, Jamal Sheed, and then some of the non-guaranteed deals or partially non-guaranteed deals. Jamison Battle, Colin Castleton, who had that really weird situation where he was with Toronto on 10 days and then with Philly on 10 days. And then the Friday, second to last day of the regular season, because there's no games on Saturday, ended that Sunday. He signed a partially guaranteed deal to return to Toronto. So he played a game on a 10-day with Philly on Friday and returned to play for the Raptors on Sunday. Very strange situation. Fun turnaround, I guess. AJ Lawson's there. So they have them they have 10 guys that could be rotation pieces next year, or 10 guys, like a 10 deep rotation, plus a lottery pick. So there's probably going to be some guys pushed out of the rotation because they're probably not going to run an 11-man rotation when everyone's healthy. Let's just be honest. So if we're projecting how that looks, Quickley at point guard, RJ Barrett shooting guard, Brandon Ingram small forward, Scotty Barnes power forward, Jakob Poeltl center. Jamal Sheed would be the best option for a backup point guard. So I assume that he at least sees some minutes. Probably not a significant role. But you also have to acknowledge that Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes will see time as either the lead ball handler or the playmaker, depending on what you want to call that role. So that doesn't guarantee Jamal Sheed minutes every single game or a consistent role. If they choose to not have him be the backup point guard and just choose to have Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes kind of fill that role when Emmanuel Quickley isn't on the floor. Grady Dick, I'm assuming, is going to be the 6th man, kind of the top priority to see the reserve minutes. Agbaji is a solid piece, has had some strong performances over the last couple seasons, but Jacoby Walter had some flashes during his rookie year, as did Jonathan Mobo. Walter was more so down the stretch. Mobo was in spurts throughout the season. So they have the makings of a team. You can be excited about the Raptors. I think if you're expecting them to be a top 5 seed, avoid the play-in tournament in the East, well, then maybe you might be let down a little bit. But they have the makings of a core and one that is more ready to return to the postseason or make the postseason than a lot of the other teams that we've discussed. And they're not old. The only 2 players on their roster that are currently over 30 are the 2 players that are unrestricted free agents. So as far as who's under contract for next season, Jakob Poeltl is the oldest player at 29 currently. I can we won't worry about his birthday to see if he'll be 30 by the time the season starts or whatever. I think the main question marks are health. So we'll just pull up. So as far as games played, Jamal Sheed played the most games for them this season at 75. Scotty Barnes was second at 65, which was great. Would have met did meet the threshold. So if he was up for postseason awards, then he would have been able to get that. Agbaji played 64. Mobo played 63, and nobody else reached 60. We had RJ Barrett at 58, Hurdle at 57, Grady Dick at 54. Quickly was down at 33. But you almost have to put an asterisk next to a lot of those because the final month of the season, at least month plus, they were doing that thing where they were alternating games played. So one game it would be the Jakob Hurdle Emmanuel Quickly duo that would play, and then the next game would be the RJ Barrett Ochai Baji duo that would play. Scotty Barnes was different because he had been an all-star, so there's more requirements for him to play, and he was able to meet the 65 game thresholds. So that was good. But if Toronto is going to be back into the postseason next year, they're going to need these guys playing closer to, more than 60 games. Hopefully even more than that, but at least 60 to 65, because they have the depth, but they can't have these mass injuries or mass absences like they did this season. The first guy that we had really high expectations for this season. Well, we'll get into that one moment. Just to look ahead to their picks. So they have their pick this year and next year, the year after that. It's a fairly normal situation. The only difference or only non-normal thing is that they don't have their own second this year or the next year, but they have Portland's this year and the Lakers the year after. And then in 2031, they've also traded away their second. So they have the pieces to make moves. They don't have extra firsts, but they have their first. So if they want to make a move for a star, they can. Do they go after Giannis this summer? They have the pieces. They have players to match contracts. They have the picks needed. Is it the right move? Maybe. I'm totally just now forming together what this could look like in my head as I'm recording this. Something kind of built around RJ Barrett, which is, that's not the RJ Barrett and picks, RJ Barrett for the salary aspect of it, and then whatever else filler you need. Does Brandon Ingram, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes, and Giannis as a starting lineup? Does that? Oof. I don't know how much I love that fit. Obviously, they'd be a very good team, but it would probably be a better situation for Giannis than the current Bucks. But Brandon Ingram's lack of availability. If they get him to be more available, which is more of a chance thing, just have good injury luck and have him more willing to shoot more threes. I think sometimes he can fall in love with the mid-range shot. And for him to be a floor spacer, Scotty Barnes to be more of a floor spacer, and then Quickly could that help negate some of the Jakob Poeltl, Giannis duo in the front court spacing issues? Maybe some, but that's still an abysmal spacing situation because Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram aren't elite shooters. So I don't know if I love that situation, but it would improve the Raptors. It would improve Giannis's chances of winning a championship. Could they pull off a move like that? Could it be for a different star? Sure. I'm not as confident that too many other stars will be available the way that I'm expecting Giannis to be. But who knows? We'll see what ends up happening. We will talk about now some more of the specific players. First off, the player that a lot of people had high expectations for. A lot of fantasy analysts had high expectations for this season. That's Emmanuel Quickly. Only played in 33 games. Finished off the end of the 2023-2024 season really well with the Raptors. A couple of big games late season at the end of that season. He had a 32-7-9 game, a 31-7-13, a 25-11-9. After he got traded to Toronto from New York, and he was finally a starter, I think there's a lot more optimism about what he could be. His teammate at Kentucky, Tyrese Maxey, had just broken out. So it was kind of like, oh, maybe Emmanuel Quickly will get that chance. And then he gets hurt game one and then misses a couple weeks, comes back, plays 2 games. Then he misses almost 2 months. Then he comes back, plays a few games. Then he misses 3 weeks. And then he was pretty much available January 31st on. But at that point, he had already missed so many games, and then he was doing the alternating availability thing. 33 games is not a lot. It's not ideal for if you're in a redraft league and you believed in the breakout. It's not ideal in a dynasty league if you believed in the breakout and tried to trade for him before he fully broke out. If we're looking at a good opportunity to trade for him, it's now. Coming off playing 33 games, averaged 17.1 points, 3.5 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 2.6 threes. I mean, his minutes, so the year before was a combination of his time with Toronto and New York. His minutes went down from that situation, from that time. A lot of that was because his minutes were limited when he did play, and he also had a handful of games where he had just come back and he played like 15 minutes. Some early exits mixed in there as well. And when you only play 33 games, those end up factoring in a little bit more than if you play 65. But he averaged a career high in both points and assists per game and threes. I'm optimistic. He'll turn 26 in June. But I think he's locked in as the starting point guard. I don't foresee a reason for them to move off of Emmanuel Quickly. Even if a star becomes available, I think that Quickly is a guy that you want to keep around. Unless it's a start point guard, but I can't think of any of those that would be worth breaking the bank for that would be available. So, especially when Quickly has the upside to maybe not get to like a all NBA level, but I think he has the upside to be an all-star point guard. I think he just needs to have a healthy season. And this will be potentially upcoming the first healthy season that he has as a starting point guard. I think he's shown enough both as a sixth man with New York and in his starts with Toronto to be optimistic about what he can be in a full-time starting role for a full season, assuming this team is more competitive next season. Whether that is they're able to just have a little bit of injury luck or enough injury luck to make them want to be competitive. Maybe they get a little lucky in the lottery and add someone else, a top 2 or 3 pick, or even if they just kind of stay where they are, there'll be a talented player there. I think I'm trying to think how I would feel about this if they end up getting the number 2 pick and taking Dylan Harper. How does that impact Emmanuel Quickly? I would imagine that Quickly is still the starter immediately. Just depends on how well Dylan Harper transitions into the NBA, which usually takes point guards time. He is a little bit of a bigger guard, so maybe he figures things out a little quicker. And maybe that results in Emmanuel Quickly like spending time on the floor with Dylan Harper in more of an off-ball role as well, while also starting the point guard and having Harper off the bench. I don't really know. We'll figure that out in a couple weeks, exactly what that's going to look like or who potentially could be there when Toronto is on the clock with their pick in June. I'm optimistic about Quickly. I think that a lot of these Toronto guys kind of forgotten about just based on the way their season ended, with a lot of them in and out of the rotation or just straight up injured. It's a good time to buy low. I think Quickly If we bump up his minutes 4 per game and he's in the lineup more consistently, so he has less, I guess, rhythm issues. Maybe his field goal percentage bumps up a couple points. He gets an extra shot per game. He gets to 20 points and 7 assists, 3 threes. I don't think that's unrealistic at all. I'm excited to see what he can do next year. I really hope that he stays healthy. I think I'm more excited about him next year than anyone else in Toronto. So good time to send in a low ball offer on Emmanuel quickly. The guy, let's see, who do we want to talk about next? I don't really want to talk about RJ Barrett all that long, but I guess we will just because he came with quickly in the trade from New York. RJ Barrett's just not a great category league player, which, I mean, if you're enough of a fan of fantasy basketball or dynasty leagues to be listening to this show, then I'm sure you're aware of that. But he did make improvements. The free throw percentage really bogged his numbers down. The field goal percentage isn't great. Doesn't really do anything defensively, statistically. But he averaged career highs in points, rebounds, and assists. And I don't think he's the guy that you want to be, I guess, the leading scorer or the number 2 or 3 option. Maybe number 3 is fair on like a playoff team. I don't think he's like really talented and can do a lot of things, but he also has his limitations. And I don't think he's efficient enough in that role to justify it and for it to make sense for him to be a high volume guy on a playoff team. Now, if he is able to improve his efficiency like the year before, he shot 49.5% from the floor and he had some stretches where it was like, oh, okay, like there's definitely some 9-cat value here. And to be clear, depending on your team build, yeah, RJ Barrett can definitely have some value. If you're punting certain categories, such as, say, you're punting free throw percentage, and you're not too concerned about the lack of defensive stats because you get those from other players, then yeah, his points, rebounds, and assists can have value. And there's only so many 20-point per game scorers that also average 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and almost 2 threes. There's only so many. So yeah, he's still valuable in that aspect, but he doesn't impact as many categories as you'd like to see. And I don't really see that coming around, which is totally okay. It's not a knock on him as a player. It's just the way that he plays doesn't result in great category league value. Don't really see that changing. He'll be 25 this summer. So he's got a nice long career ahead of him. And he's back in his hometown playing in Toronto. That's good for him. It's cool for him. Hopefully he can stick around. Any improvements that he can make will be huge because it won't take much for him to, I guess, improve his category league value. He finished Basketball Monster had him 223 this year. That's with being a negative in steals, blocks, field percentage, turnovers, and then a major negative in free throw percentage. If he gets his free throw percentage back up to what it was the year before, which was 71.5% from 63%, or anywhere close to that, like that helps his value out a good bit. So I would assume playing with Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel quickly, like having everybody healthy at the same time, that'll get Barrett easier looks. So maybe he's able to improve his field goal percentage that way. Maybe as the, say, I don't know if you'd consider him the number 2 or number 3 scoring option. I would consider him closer to number 3, but we'll see if he agrees. But if he's playing with a healthy Raptors lineup, does he get easier looks to improve the field goal percentage? Does he buy in more defensively to try and help them because they'll be trying to fight for a postseason spot? Could he get over a steal per game? Could he get it to half a block per game? Those little adjustments will improve his category league value overall. May not be a big difference maker in your league specifically to say, okay, RJ Barrett's going from 0.8 steals to 1 steal per game, but it'll make things look better for him, improve his value. And I think maybe not even underrated, but just an aspect in dynasty leagues that you need to consider or that you hope for is that the players on your team increase their value. It'd be the same thing if you're playing the stock market. The ones you have, you want to increase in value. The players you have, you want to increase their value. You want them to play well. And the players on other teams, you want to play poorly. That way you can make trades to get players at low value and trade away your players at high value. So you're wanting to see those types of improvements for RJ Barrett. And I think those are kind of the paths. Is things are made easier for him by having his teammates healthy, and he commits to more defensive effort because his teammates are healthy. Now, that probably does drop his points and assists ever so slightly. Like maybe he goes back down below 20 points per game. I don't really see him taking a dramatic hit there. Don't think he gets to 5.4 assists per game if Emmanuel Quickley, Brandon Ingram, and Scotty Barnes are all out on the floor consistently. So maybe that drops back down. Hopefully he can keep it around 4 at least, because the previous season he was at 3.3, which is career high at the time. 5.4 was a pretty big leap. I think it shows his improvement as a playmaker, but he's still not the guy you want to be the primary playmaker. Overall, not a fantastic category league player. Definitely much better in points leagues. But he can make slight improvements to be a little bit better in category leagues. But still, you're looking for points with him. Points, rebounds, and assists is what you need. That translates much better in points leagues than it does in category leagues. We'll talk about a guy who is probably, the best dynasty asset on this team, and that is Scotty Barnes, who I had my last dynasty ranking update. I had him at 18. I want to say we'll see. He'll probably end up dropping slightly, just looking at who's around him. But I think it depends because his value is also probably lower than it was the year before, whereas some of the guys right below him have definitely raised their value. So it's a good time to quote unquote buy low on Scotty Barnes. He's too good to truly buy low, but I think his value did take a hit this past season, and whether that's fair or not, I think the numbers that he produced simply weren't as good as the year before. Everything basically dropped. His steals went up 0.1. Every other category, his value dropped. He was 21st on Basketball Monster the year before. His points dropped by 0.6, rebounds by 0.5, assists by 0.3, blocks by a half, threes by a half, field goal percentage by 2.9%, free throw percentage by 2.6%, turnovers stayed the same, minutes went down. That's what happens when your teammates aren't healthy and available. That's how it's like RJ Barrett's field goal percentage and his free throw percentage. That's not necessarily as related, but his field goal percentage took a hit, as did Scotty Barnes. They were having to, they drew more defensive attention. So I think having everybody healthy will be a really good thing for Scotty Barnes. RJ Barrett, he loses out on having the ball in his hands, and his biggest impact is the points, rebounds, and assists. Well, he's not getting as many points and assists if other people are out there to get them. Scotty Barnes is such a well-rounded category league player. He doesn't find his value score. His career has 19.9 points per game. We know what he's going to do as a scorer. It's not great, but it's good, and he's contributing in every other category. So having more players out there to accept offensive responsibility or to take shots, that can help his defensive numbers and rebounds go up, and he can pass to those players to hit the shots. Like having more talented players out there, they hit better shots, hit more shots. It's a good thing for Scotty Barnes. I'm expecting a bounce back season from him. Hopefully he's able to kind of vault himself back into the conversation for among the top players for the 2021 class, because it feels like this past season with Cade Cunningham and, Rockets fans, Alperen Sengun, not Jalen Green, leading their respective teams back to the postseason. And then Evan Mobley obviously still playing in the playoffs. That Scotty Barnes kind of missing out on that kind of dropped him down a tier in comparison. So I'm expecting him to bounce back. Hopefully, just having Toronto be more competitive will help with that as well. But I'm expecting his numbers to improve. All right, who else can we talk about from Toronto? Jakob Poeltl is Jakob Poeltl. I don't really see too much changing. Solid numbers across the board, terrible free throw percentage, but a good passer for a big. Let's talk about some of these floor spacers that they have on the perimeter. Grady Dick, who I think it's probably going to be end up just kind of repeating some points for Jacoby Walter here, but we know what he can do when he gets hot. We know what he can do when he had shots. He had started off last season incredibly well, and then kind of tapered off a little bit as the season progressed. We just need to see him do more consistently other than score and hit threes. Like, we know he can, but is that what is best for the team? Or is it just like, hey, we know you can do these other things, maybe do them occasionally, but like really we want you out here to shoot the ball, hit threes, and score. Same thing with Jacoby Walter. The difference is Jacoby Walter down the stretch of last season was only seeing those shots because, well, they were trying to improve their lottery odds. Grady Dick, I think, is a step above him in that regard, because I assume when everyone's healthy, he'll be the sixth man next season, whereas Jacoby Walter may be a little further down the bench. It's a bit of a, I don't want to say redundant skill set. The fact they went like shooter that doesn't do too much else in the first round 2 years in a row, but both those guys have the ability to do more. But is that what Toronto needs from them? So I'm not sure how well they're going to develop for category leagues. It's going to be a lot of threes, a lot of points. I mean, not even a lot of points, just that's what they're going to do when they're out there. It's not ideal for fantasy, but it'll be valuable for the Raptors. And I think that, and again, that's not to discredit them because I think they both can do more, but will they be asked to? They had a lot of guys show flashes down the stretch. I'm not going to go in depth on all of them or really many of them, but I definitely want to highlight them. Guys like Jared Rhoden, AJ Lawson, Orlando Robinson, mentioned some of them earlier, Colin Castleton, Jamison Battle, guys that played well when they got the chance, but I don't think are locked in as part of Toronto's future. Jamal Sheed is a guy, I'll just throw him up here on the screen, went in the second round last year, played very well on that Houston team in college. I think he's a really solid backup point guard. And if Toronto chooses to make him like the full-on backup point guard behind Quickly and maybe give him like 15 minutes per game next season, they'll have a really good playmaker and I think a good defender off the bench who has the ability to get hot at times. He did that a couple times late this past season. Yeah, I think he's a solid backup. I don't know that he'll ever, unless Emmanuel Quickly has another injury-riddled season, Jamal Sheed is probably just going to be in a reserve role, which is going to limit his fantasy impact. But he's coming off year one. I think he showed a lot of upside there, even coming in as a little bit of an older rookie, specifically as a playmaker. So is it in Toronto's plans or in another team's plans for him to be a starting point guard? We'll see how he develops. I'm not super optimistic about that, but I think he's a guy that's going to be in the NBA for a really long time and should get some opportunities to start in spurts or spot starts that'll result in some fun fantasy games, fantasy stretches, maybe a little bit more valuable in redraft formats at times than in Dynasty, but young enough that he still definitely holds value in Dynasty formats. The other guy that I think is pretty intriguing is Jonathan Mobo, who was also a second-round pick, first pick of the second round. And he had different games where he did a little bit of everything. So just, last last 4 games of the season for him. He went 17-11-7-2-2, 17-10-11-3, 8-8-8-1-2, 9-14-10-4. One of those games he shot 8 of 9 from the floor, and then 2 of the games he shot below 30%. So it's like, who knows what you're going to get each night. He has the ability to do anything / everything, but he doesn't tend to do everything at the same time. Not a great shooter, but he did hit some threes as a rookie. Also came in as an older rookie. Will turn 24 probably shortly after the season starts, this upcoming season. I think he fills in as kind of a 15-minute per game backup in year 2. And he can, again, contribute across the board. But I think it's hard for him to kind of carve out a role with who's in front of him, at least this next season. Now we'll see how the roster continues to play out over the next few seasons. If Toronto lucks out and ends up with a guy like Cooper Flagg, like Jonathan Mobo, sorry, buddy, you're kind of getting pushed down the pecking order a little bit here. And that's just the way it is. I can't really see, pretty much any rookie they draft on the wing. I'm just looking at some of the other guys at the top. I think Ace Bailey may be the only. Ace Bailey, Derek Queen, maybe Common Malawatch. Maybe a guy like Colin Murray Boyles or Asa Newell. Like those guys would push Mobo down the pecking order a little bit. But we'll see who Toronto ends up even drafting or getting the opportunity to draft. I wouldn't panic too soon because Mobo does have a fantasy-friendly skill set. I don't think Toronto has any intentions to move on from him because he is like a really good player. And when he gets the opportunity, the fantasy stats are nice. They are very, very good. So just got to hope that he can continue to earn minutes and then maybe spend some time at like a small ball 5. I think that's probably his best path to fantasy production is as a smaller 5 behind Jakob Poeltl, because right now, just looking who they have under contract for next season, Mobo is probably the only center outside of obviously Jakob Poeltl. It's the starter. So I would say ideally he'd be a power forward, but time at that small ball center, that could work very well for him. Now, if Malawatch or Asa Newell is the pick, that changes things a little bit for him. We just got to, I guess, hope for the best. Hope it's a guard. But even though they have enough wings, too many wings. Going to be very intriguing to see who Toronto ends up selecting. Obviously, it depends on where they end up selecting because they don't have a ton of holes, but they don't have a ton of players that are so good that you don't want to draft at their position. It's pretty interesting situation. Who have we not talked about? Brandon Ingram, probably the only other guy. I can't even pull up his page because I have all my on NBA.com, all my Raptors players right here, but he didn't register stats for the Raptors last season. So I have to go back over to the Pelicans to find him. And now we have him on screen. Averaged 22.2 points per game, along with 5.6 rebounds, 5.2 assists, 2.4 threes per game. Shot 46.5% from the floor is a drop off from 49.2% the year before. Did see his threes spike back up, 2.4 per game after going the previous 3 seasons, 1.3, 1.4, 1.3. And I think if we look back to Ingram's best fantasy season, which was his first season with the Pelicans, he was much more open to shooting threes. And just as the years progressed, he wanted to shoot fewer and fewer. So first season in New Orleans, hit 2.4 threes per game, was 35th in 9 cat. Next year, 2.3 was 51st. And then the next 3 years was the 1.3, 1.4, 1.3. That's where he finished 72, 62, 85. This past season only played 18 games, which, affects things. That's a very, very small sample size. So a couple poor shooting performances, and all of a sudden, bang, you're shooting 46.5% over the course of the season. Last suited up in December. Not ideal. I don't know if he'll continue to shoot or to make 2+ threes per game. I think that's what's best for Toronto, just because they don't have. I mean, they have floor spaces off the bench, but if it's that starting lineup of Quickly, Barrett, Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Pertl, I'd say Quickly is the best shooter in that lineup, but Ingram's probably number 2. They need him shooting threes. They have. I mean, obviously he'll get his mid-range shots, but they need him to be committed to shooting threes. Opens things up for everyone on that team, and I think it will allow them to be more competitive. Just providing space for him, for Scotty Barnes to create, to drive, RJ Barrett to get his shots off. It opens up a lot of things, and it's good for him in fantasy because more threes helps in that category, helps with points. Yeah, that's what we'd like to see from him, but not expecting too many dramatic changes from him. It'll be his first season with the Raptors, but they traded for him with the intention of him coming in and being himself to try and help get them back to the playoffs. They traded Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, the Pacers 2026 first, and then the 2031 second that we mentioned way at the beginning of the episode, and signed him to a 3-year, $120 million extension. So clearly they believe in him being or returning to all-star form. Otherwise, you don't hand somebody $40 million a season that is coming off playing 18 games with one of the arguably strangest ankle sprains. I mean, he missed the final 4 months of the season because of an ankle sprain. I think some more clarity about the severity of the ankle sprain probably would have eased our minds a little bit, but evidently a 4-month absence with an ankle injury. That's what happened. Anyways, I won't play doctor here. That's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's see who are we going to talk about next episode. We are going to talk about the Spurs. That's who's next on the agenda. You can check that episode out tomorrow because it will be live. And then after that, I have a very special, very knowledgeable guest coming on to join me to talk about the 2025 class. And he will be providing some incredible information, some in-depth analysis. Don't want to miss that episode. Make sure if you are led to, like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at NoRuben22. Tweet at me with any thoughts, comments, opinions, questions, concerns. But that's going to do it for this episode, and I will see you next time.